We've been spending the last couple of weeks talking about Old Testament prophets, messengers that God raises up to speak truth to power. So a couple of weeks ago we looked at Elijah. Last week we looked at the prophet Hosea. Today they were prophets. There had been a civil war back in Israel. The north seceded from the south. Elijah, Hosea spoke to the north, but now we're turning our attention to the southern kingdom and the prophet Isaiah. Now Isaiah and Hosea both were about the same time, just in different locations. If you remember last week, Hosea used the image to help us think about this relationship between God and the people of God. Is that between a parent and a rebellious child? And if we love someone, we don't let them do destructive behavior, right? Discipline comes from a place of love because we care for them. We want what's best for them. And that's the image we had last week. Well, this week the metaphor becomes a different one. It's that of a farmer and a vineyard. In particular, the expectations the farmer has for the work that he does in the vineyard of what's going to be produced by that vineyard. Again, it's not written as a narrative, it's written as poetry, so we hear it and read it a little differently than we simply read a story. But Isaiah begins it like this. He says, "Let me sing for my beloved a love song concerning the vineyard." So here's his love song. "My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it, he cleared it of stones, he planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine vat in it. He expected it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes." Now again, this is a song, and sometimes to help us remember, sometimes we don't know what the original tune was, but John Hermanson, a guy who lives is a folk singer, lives in the Twin Cities, put it to music like this, so we can hear how it may have sounded.
My beloved had a vineyard planted with good vines, built a watchtower above it and waited for the wine. The fertile soil, when the time came, yielded only wild grapes. Oh, Jerusalem, did we falter? Did we like sheep go astray? Did we wander? Did we wander?
All right, John goes on with it, but that gives you a taste of what it means to be looking at song lyrics, not just a story. Judah had been blessed, right? What God wanted was a relationship. He says, "Let me give you a place. Let me give you a structure for your lives. All I ask is that you live in a relationship with me." But they turned away. Isaiah goes on with the song. He says, "Now, inhabitants of Jerusalem, people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I had not already done? When I expected it to yield grapes, why did it yield for me wild grapes?" God is frustrated. He's angry, if you will. I mean, sometimes there is a place for righteous indignation. It says, "I have given you everything and you have squandered it and thrown it away." And so there's going to be consequences for action. So the story goes on like this. He says, "Now I'll tell you what I'll do to the vineyard. I'll remove its hedge. It shall be devoured. I'll break down the wall. It'll be trampled on. I will make it a waste. It should not be pruned or hoed. It shall be overgrown with briars and thorns. I'll command the clouds that no rain rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel and the people of Judah. They are his pleasant planting. He expected justice, but found bloodshed. Expected righteousness, but heard a cry." What Isaiah is lifting up here is this contrast between what God expected and what the people did. One of the things when you're reading poetry that was written in in a different language is that you miss the subtleties when you translate it from one language into another. Like the last line that I just read to you. He says, he expected justice but saw bloodshed. For us, the word justice and the word bloodshed are really different kinds of words, but in Hebrew, they're almost identical words, just one letter different between the two. And so it was sort of this play on words of saying sometimes there's a fine line between justice and bloodshed. And he does it again with two other words. The word for righteousness and a cry, again in Hebrew, are almost identical words. They're just one letter difference between the two words. God has laid out a way of life. It was to be righteousness, to be justice, to live in a way, our relationship with God and with creation, with one another, that was in a right relationship. And God gave them everything that they needed. His expectation then was simply that they would live in that relationship. This is a theme that Isaiah comes back to again and again and again, the injustice that happens when people ignore that. And he gives lots of examples as he goes through the book. It's a big long book, but he gives lots of examples of what does this injustice look like. And oftentimes it ends up looking like this: the rich and powerful take advantage of the weak and the vulnerable. And again he'll give illustrations of that. Remember, back in Israel's time, there really was nothing like we call a middle class. There was the rich landowners who had all the wealth and the power, and there were the poor serfs, the servants, who did all the work. And so that's one of the realities that Isaiah speaks to. But it's not just an ancient problem, right? Unfortunately, we know something of that division. We live in a world where the rich seem to be getting richer and the poor. This distance between the ultra-rich and the poor just becomes greater and greater and greater. Sometimes when I see these big numbers associated in economics, it's hard for me it boggles my mind to understand how much money that actually is, when the number of the national debt. I mean, it's hard for me to comprehend how much that is. I was just trying to figure out what would it take for someone to be a millionaire, right? Just a millionaire, all right? So to be a millionaire, that means you would make $20,000 every week. $20,000 a week, right? If you're working 40 hours a week, that's $500 an hour. I would love a job that paid $500 an hour to do that. Now, say you got this job where you make $1 million every year. Now, say you did that for 1,000 years. So you lived 1,000 years. You made $1 million every year. You get to be a billionaire. All right? All right. And there would still be 600 people in America who are richer than you. All right. And some of them are 100 times richer than you. How much do you need? How much is necessary? How much can one person have? With that kind of wealth, I just cannot understand why there are homeless and hungry people in this country. I mean, when Isaiah was talking about injustice, the difference between the rich, the ultra-rich, and the poor, this is what he was sort of getting at, right? Now, there's this lack of justice, it ends up being destructive for the people. The vineyard is destroyed. It looks like life is over. But Isaiah reminds us there's more to the story. Isaiah speaks of one who is yet to come, one who comes from the line of David. The language that Isaiah uses is the root of Jesse. Jesse was David's father. And so it says if you're talking about David's family lineage, it's the family of Jesse. And he shows us what righteousness, what justice will look like. And this is how he describes it. This is a few chapters later after our reading we just heard. It says, a shoot will come out of the stump of Jesse. A branch will grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him. Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. The delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. Isaiah is saying life is persistent, right? Death is overcome by life. There's a resurrection. There's new life that is possible even when we don't see any hope. And this blessing, the Spirit of the Lord resting upon him, Spirit of wisdom and understanding, Spirit of counsel and might, Spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. That sounds familiar is because we use that all the time. Every time someone is baptized in the font, we give that blessing, that charge to them. This is what it looks like to be a child of God. This is what righteousness, this is what justice looks like. We do it again when they are confirmed. And we reaffirm that for us. This is a good job description for us. What does a life of justice, righteousness look like? Now Isaiah goes on. He says, this one who's coming, this one who embodies righteousness. He says, he will not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he will judge the poor. Right? Justice, have a blindfold on. I'm not going to look at what they look like or how they're dressed. I will just give them justice. I will decide with equity for the meek of the earth. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, faithfulness the belt around his loins. He's talking about a whole new way of life where the rich will not trample the poor, where the powerful and the vulnerable are able to live together in community, where predator and prey live in peace. The image, he goes on with this wonderful image, right? He says, the wolf will lay down with the lamb. The leopard will lay down with the kid. The calf and the lion, the fatling, together. And a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lay down. The lion shall eat straw like an ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain. For the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, just as the waters cover the sea. Again, this is a song. I'll let John put it to music for us a little bit.
Then a shoot will spring out from the branch of Jesse. From its roots will bear fruit, and the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The wolf will lie down with the lamb. The ox and the lion will graze together. And a little child will lead them.
So Isaiah is giving us a picture of the ideal world, a world that is worth working toward. The prophets then are pointing to this future that we see fulfilled in Jesus, right? God, who had promised to Abraham centuries before, one of his descendants through him, a whole world would be blessed, is brought to fruition in the life of Jesus, and that work continues through us. Let's get the band back up here. We're going to sing a song reminds us how God just never gives up on us, never gives up hope, that God's love is a love that endures forever.